Welcome back to another edition of the Futbol Forever podcast, a podcast where we talk about the Liga MX and everything going on around Mexican football. Welcome back to another podcast, baby. Yes, a lot of stuff to talk about, man. A lot of stuff to discuss, to dissect. For example, like the Clásico Joven. Was the match between this Cruz Azul and this América team a letdown? Do you think it was overhyped? Do you think it lived up to the hype? We'll discuss it in more detail later on in the pod. Also, we're going to mention and we're going to talk about the number one contender, the team that, in my opinion, is probably best suited and looking in the best form to win it all, to win the championship. I'll let you guys know who that is in a few minutes. And also, what happened to Chivas, man? What happened to Chivas? El Rebaño Sagrado basically says goodbye to their playoff hopes. They lose 2-1 at home versus Monarcas, a game that they were controlling, man. A game that they started off on top. They started off winning with a ton of opportunities, a ton of missed chances by the Chivas offense. And El Rebaño loses, man. They lose again. And like I said, mathematically, it's still possible that they could qualify to the Liguilla. But basically, with this loss, they really don't depend on themselves. They got to win their remaining 3 matches and then hope for a combination of results and a miracle, basically, that allows them into the Liga MX playoffs. So not a good weekend, man. Not a good weekend for Chivas and Chivas fans. But we'll discuss the game in more detail. So let's get started, man. I hope you guys are having a good morning, a good afternoon, whenever you're listening to this. Thank you guys for tuning in. All right, man. Let's start off with who I think is the number one contender heading into the Liga MX playoffs, heading into the Liguilla. The number one contender, in my opinion, is, and I'm sure some of you guys will agree, Santos. Santos, Los Laguneros, baby. I mean, this team is crazy. They're pretty incredible. How they do it year after year. They're the defending champs. But it seems like every year they let go of 1, maybe 2. In this past offseason, they let go of 3 key starting 11 players. 3 huge names in the locker room, 3 huge names in the roster. And look at them now. They're tied for first place with Club America. They're tied in points, at least, with 28 points. Only, the goal difference, I think, is favoring America. But this Santos team is incredible how they do that year after year. All season, we've been hearing about Cruz Azul, about America. Monterrey early on, they had a hot start. Tigres, although Tigres is struggling to clinch one of those final spots for the Liguilla. But, that's really what you've been hearing. The title contenders are, Cruz Azul, they're back. The heavy investment they made and Ricardo Peláez and Caixinha, America, you always hear about America if they're doing okay, as one of the title contenders. Monterrey, like I said, you heard about them too, and Tigres. But what about the defending champs? They have a very, very real chance, man, at going back-to-back. This team is currently clicking on all cylinders, man. And it's amazing, like I said, because this past offseason, they lost some huge names. They lost Giannini Tavares, their top goal scorer, last year's goal-scoring champ, right? With like 14 goals or something like that for the season. They lost Néstor Araujo to Celta de Vigo. Their starting center back, one of their starting center backs, and then they let go of their other starting center back, in Izquierdos. They let him go to Boca Juniors. And then also, if you remember, they lost their head coach earlier in the season due to an alleged scuffle that he had with a player. And still, Santos found a way, man. But it seems like Santos always finds a way. They're currently in the second place of the league table, tied with America. And this team is practically unbeatable at home. They have 1 home loss in 2 seasons. They have a strong roster again. Like I said, so Santos, can let go of a player, 2 players, and then their scouting department and their I don't know who is in charge of that, but they've always find a suitable replacement. Someone just as good or better. Right now they have Julio Furch, as the top goal scorer with 11 goals currently. And let's also not forget about Jonathan Rodriguez, who is having a fantastic season with Santos, man. And I wouldn't be surprised if Santos sold, Furch or Jonathan Rodriguez, or hell, maybe both. I mean, I doubt they sell both because, that's a heavy, heavy hit. But honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they sold both of them in the offseason or in, another in 2 seasons. I don't know when they will let them go, if they do. But, if they are to sell one or both, they'll no doubt find a perfect replacement for them. They literally always do. So this Santos team is just amazing how they do this season after season. Currently, in my opinion, they're the ones playing the best football. You're hearing a lot of rumors, a lot of noise around Cruz Azul and around America right now because, they're at the top of the league table, maybe even Pumas, because Pumas is up there as well. But quietly, Santos has snuck in. Right in between all the Capitalinos, right in between Pumas, right in between Cruz Azul and America. And they're there, man. They're going to defend their crown like hell, man. And this team is very, very good. Like I said, who's going to beat them at home? Who's going to beat this team at home? And, they're looking very, very strong. They're playing the best football, as you heard me say. Hey, man, they're firing on all cylinders. So I'm looking forward to watching what Santos does in the Liguilla, in the playoffs, how they defend their title. It's going to be very, very, very damn intriguing. So anyways, man, let's move on. Let's move on from the Santos talk. Let's move on to the Clásico Joven talk, the Cruz Azul versus America breakdown. And, I guess to mention Santos a little bit more, before Friday night, this match, the Clásico Joven, was marketed as the number 1 versus the number 2. But since Santos defeated Monterrey on Friday, Santos kind of ruined that, kind of spoiled that a little bit. Santos went up to number 1, so the Clásico was now really number 2 versus number 3. But so anyway, that was just something I wanted to mention. This was a very interesting match, man. Before kickoff, before the opening whistle, this was a match that presented a very interesting duel between Guido Rodriguez and Ivan Marcone, man. In my opinion, these are the top 2 central defensive mids in the league, man, for sure. You could maybe throw in Gallito Vázquez in there. I don't know who else do you want, Guido Pizarro maybe. But in my opinion, I have Guido Rodriguez and Ivan Marcone as the number 1, number 2. Now, to answer the question, was the game a letdown? I would say kinda. Yeah, right? Like, the first half was pretty good. The first half was a delight, in my opinion. Although there were no goals, the teams were trading blows. There was plenty of action. I think America started off with a little bit more intensity. They were the ones pushing the action, having the better opportunities to score earlier in the first half. In only the second minute of the match, you already had the Cruz Azul defense scrambling to block America's first attempt with a shot from Diego Lainez. And only 3 minutes later, you had a volley on the other side of the pitch by Elias Hernandez, that would just barely miss the mark. So in like 5 minutes, you already had, one chance for each team. And it was just a thrilling start, man. Lainez had some interesting moments in the match. He had some key dribbles versus Cata Dominguez. That was in the first half. And then he had one against Aldrete in the second half. He manages to get past defenders pretty easily. But ultimately, he fails in that final decision-making process, which is something that we all, I'm sure we all hope that he figures out a little bit. Diego Lainez for the future of Mexico. because I think if he continues this development process, he will end up in Qatar 2022. And obviously, we want to see improvements from now until then. And I'm sure we will. I'm sure we will see improvements. So, anyways, back to the game. Cruz Azul, man. Cruz Azul. From Cruz Azul, in this match, I really liked Pablo Aguilar, man. Pablo Aguilar basically won every duel versus Roger Martinez, the America striker. And the Cruz Azul defense, the Cruz Azul defense gave up the ball several times to the America attackers, but Pablo Aguilar was always there to save the day, man. The dude is simply a rock. He's hands down still the best defender in the league, in my opinion. And it is no surprise that the league's best defense has Pablito Aguilar leading them. It just makes sense. And from the Club America team, from this game, I liked Guido Rodriguez, man. Guido Rodriguez was, amazing in this match. If we're pushing the whole Guido versus Marcone narrative, I think it's safe to say that the America man won this one. He won the battle, not the war. I'm sure maybe these teams will face off in the Liguilla and Marcone will get the upper hand. But I think this first battle, it's safe to say Guido Rodriguez took it. Just like Pablo Aguilar, man, this dude is also a wall in the midfield. He's just so damn difficult to get through. There is no way that America would be in their current first place of the league a spot without Guido Rodriguez. In my opinion, this dude is the best defensive midfielder in the league. I said it was number 1 versus number 2, maybe Ivan Marcone. I think Guido Rodriguez for sure is number 1, and this game kind of solidified that for me in my head. And what a season he's having. Since Jesus Molina left a couple years ago, America had struggled to find a suitable replacement in the midfield for Molina. They tried different names, William da Silva. What was that Uruguayo that came from Xolos? I'm forgetting his name. Pereiro. I forgot his name, man. But they tried multiple players in that position. El Chepe Guerrero, I remember, and no one could replace Molina until Guido Rodriguez. That has basically been someone better in that position. So in my opinion, Pablo Aguilar for Cruz Azul shined bright. And then Guido Rodriguez on the America side. Those were the two top guys that I believe came out of this match. So anyway, back to the game. Cruz Azul, man, they definitely managed to expose some of America's weaknesses in the first half via set piece play. On 2 occasions, they hit the woodwork by winning headers in set pieces, man. The America defense definitely needs to step that up. Piojo is something that's something that he has to get under control before the playoffs. And America was simply very, very lucky not to find themselves down at the half, man, for sure. And unfortunately, that the first half, after the whistle to end the first half, that was really the end of the real good action for this match, man. It was unfortunate, but in the second half, the intensity dropped dramatically. I guess it's kind of understandable that the first half, that the second half would be a polar opposite from the first half. I don't like it, but both these teams are qualified. They're gonna qualify. I know they're not mathematically already qualified, but basically it would take something incredible and out of the ordinary kind of to really get these teams out of their playoff hopes. So they're basically qualified. And let's all remember that tonight, Cruz Azul has the Copa MX final against Monterrey. So Cruz Azul was gonna, probably focus a little bit more on that. And it just seems like they both were content with the draw. They really just focused on not making any mistakes in the second half, not leaving a lot of room for the opposition to work with. With a draw, America ensured the top of the league table once again. And like I said, Cruz Azul has the Copa MX final. So and also a draw would allow both teams to remain undefeated in the Azteca for the season. So, yep. You got a deal, man. A draw it is, and it seems like the teams were just happy with that. They were content with a draw in this match. The goalkeepers, man, Marchesin, he really didn't have a lot of work to do in the second half, and Corona had a little more, but he wasn't really required to make any outstanding saves by any means. The teams, they made the right subs, they made the correct substitutions. America brought in Oribe for Ibarra, and Cruz Azul brought in Caraglio for Mendes, but their tactics really didn't change, man. Neither one was going to risk it all. Or wasn't going to risk all that much attempting to win the match. And they just kind of stayed, content. Let's not make any mistakes. And, if we get an opportunity, we'll try to take advantage of it, man. But, I get the feeling that this won't be the last time that these teams will face off against each other, man. Not for this season. I feel like there's a good chance that we're going to see these teams in the Liga MX playoffs. Can you imagine a playoff series between these two, men? Better yet, a final between these two. That will be something. That would be something because that's a way for Cruz Azul to exercise their demons, man. Against Club America for that 2013, that May 2013 final that Cruz Azul lost in an epic way to a header from Moises Muñoz. Well, the header didn't really kill Cruz Azul. That sent it to overtime, but then they lost it in penalties. You know what I mean, man. But that would be a way for Cruz Azul to get some revenge, man. Get some redemption against Club America. So, a final between these two teams. I can't even imagine the hype behind that, man. But anyways, the Clásico Joven, did it live up to the hype? I don't think it did. I think it fell short. The first half, like I said, it was delightful. Second half, not so much. I think the second half was a snooze fest. It was kind of boring. And the Azteca pitch continues to be a damn disgrace. What the hell happened to the league's best field? Now it's the worst. Absolutely the worst field in the league, and that is a damn disgrace for the Estadio Azteca, the mythical Estadio Azteca, host of 2 World Cups. Maradona, Pele played there. I mean, how are you gonna? No, man, it's infuriating. It's frustrating. Anyway, let's move on, man. Let's move on from the Clásico Joven. Let's move on to Chivas. What happened to Chivas, man? I mean, what happens to Chivas at home? Basically, Chivas is done, man. Chivas says goodbye to their playoff hopes. And it's incredible how it happened because they played well for at least 30 minutes, but they couldn't increase their lead, and that ultimately killed their hopes, man. I mean, in only the 5th minute in this match versus Morelia, in only the 5th minute, you already had a great cross from Brizuela that would create the opportunity for Ángel Saldívar to finish and score Chivas' first goal. In another instance, Brizuela would win another duel and once again send in a good cross to find Gael Sandoval, who would miss with a bicycle kick attempt. But Cone Brizuela, man, he continues to cement himself as the player of the season for Chivas, in my opinion. Van Ranking has also been good. But it just hasn't been enough, man. And Chivas missed at least 3 or 4 opportunities, man, in the first half. At least it's a clear-cut opportunities. Chivas should have been leading 3-0 by the end of the half. I'm not even exaggerating. And it definitely cost them, man. Because early in the second half, Morelia would make Chivas pay for being so generous and not finishing their chances. Achillier would score the equalizer in an odd goal with a series of rebounds. And Chivas, they had their opportunities, man. The Morelia defense was disastrous in the first half. They were terrible. And defending like that would ensure that this Morelia team, they would have a swift first round exit in the eventual case that they end up qualifying to the Liguilla, because you can't defend like that and stay alive. There's no way you would survive a series versus an America, versus a Cruz Azul, versus a Santos defending like they did. But, defending like they did, they were able to live because Chivas would not finish, man. They would not finish their opportunities. These teams, Cruz Azul, America, Santos, Toluca, Pumas. These teams are a lot more clinical and efficient with their finishing than Chivas. With all of that being said, Morelia, they greatly improved in the second half, and it was a Chivas team whose defending was just very poor. Morelia they were not as generous as Chivas was in the second half, and they definitely made Chivas pay. So, I mean, how disappointing, man. How disappointing to not have this Chivas team in the Liga MX playoffs. They definitely add a lot of color to the playoffs. Their fans definitely deserve having this team in the playoffs. But who's responsible? Who, if you're a Chivas fan listening to this, who would you name as the main culprit? Who's the guy that we need to point the finger to? Is it one guy? Is it two guys? Is it the entire team, the entire organization? Is it Cardoso? Is it the players? Is it Higuera? Who would you name as the one that's mainly responsible? Because in my eyes, it's probably Higuera. Currently, what is he, the sporting president, or I don't know what they shifted his title to something else, and now I think he's a sporting president or sporting director or something like that. But basically, from what we've been reading and hearing, Higuera is the one that's responsible for kind of disassembling the team. Pizarro went to Monterrey mainly because Higuera wanted to sell him to bring in funds to the club. Cota, they decided that they weren't going to re-sign Cota. They let go of Osvaldo Alanis. They let him go to Spain. So they lost key players, and they really didn't bring in the correct names, let's just say that, to replace these. They didn't do their replacement duties, I guess you can say, their talent replacement as good as Santos would, who always finds a suitable replacement for the key names they lose. So who would you blame, man? Is it Higuera? I think most of the Chivas fan base is pointing the finger at Higuera because Cardoso, man, I would not believe that Chivas could let him go, man. He was so close. He was just one or two results off of, probably qualifying this Chivas team. I mean, we'll see what they do in their final 3 games of the season, but Cardoso was working well with these players. He had this team playing well, this Chivas team, relatively well. Obviously not incredible, because Chivas has continued to struggle throughout the season, especially at home, which is amazing. I think in 3 years or 3 seasons, they've only won 2 games at home, and that's unacceptable. That's crazy. So you won't get far playing like that at home, or not being able to get any results at home. You can't do it because the being on the road is also complicated. So yeah, but Cardoso, I definitely don't think he's the one to blame. Some players, they I don't want to say they gotta go, but it's time for them to start taking a lesser role in the locker room. Maybe Salcido and Aris Hernandez are the ones that I was reading throughout the week that had problems with Cardoso. I think it's time for these players, because they're past their prime. So it might be time for these players to already, start, shifting their focus and being more of a support role for the players, instead of just trying to, I don't know, be the alphas in the locker room. I really don't know how the dynamic works in the Chivas locker room, but it just seems like there's a lot of things wrong, and some of those things include certain players that are currently at Chivas. So anyway, man, for the sake of the Chivas fan base, and for the sake of Liga MX, honestly, because Chivas adds a lot to the Liguilla and to the Liga MX playoffs, you would hope that Chivas figures that out. It's not going to happen this season, unfortunately. Mathematically it's still possible, but they're in need of a miracle. But hopefully for next season or the season after that, Chivas just needs to figure it out, because they can't be dragging their name like that. It's just not a thing that a club of that stature should do and could do. So anyway, man, that's basically it. That's really all I had for the podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed the pod. I know I rambled on for a little bit, but hey, man, that's what podcasts are for, right? So if you're still listening and you're not following me on social media, go ahead and do just that. You will find it You would find links to that in whether you're listening on SoundCloud or on YouTube. There's links, there in the About section or in the description of the YouTube video. Go ahead and click them, man. It's Futbol_Forever on Twitter. It's Futbol Forever Podcast on Instagram. And on YouTube, it's just Futbol Forever, I believe. Or Futbol_Forever. I'm not too sure, but you could find the link to the YouTube channel in my Twitter. So anyway, man, thank you guys for listening once again. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Futbol Forever out.